There are many nutritional factors that influence anxiety, but the correlation between magnesium deficiencies and anxiety symptoms is not only incredibly strong, but it's an intervention that I've seen drastically improve people's anxiety symptoms. So whether you have generalized anxiety or are someone who experiences frequent anxiety or panic attacks, this video is for you. Hi, I'm Jess. I'm a clinical nutritionist, and this channel is all about optimizing your diet and lifestyle for better mental health. So if that's something that you're passionate about as well, then I'd love for you to subscribe and join our community. Today's video is all about magnesium and its role in anxiety. I absolutely love talking about magnesium. It's a mineral that most people are likely deficient in. More reasons on why that may be later on in the video. But that being said, it can actually be a miracle mineral for a lot of people. So in today's video, we're going to go over, of course, the science behind why magnesium deficiencies cause anxiety. We're going to take a look at the foods highest in magnesium, and then we're also going to be answering the question of whether or not you can actually get enough magnesium through food itself. And then, of course, if you're going to supplement, which are actually the best forms for anxiety, because if you don't know this, there are a ton of different forms of magnesium and they have different therapeutic properties. So if you have anxiety, you're going to want this information. So let's go ahead and dive into the connection between magnesium deficiencies and anxiety. So first, it's really important to address that magnesium is an essential mineral that plays a critical role in various bodily functions. Magnesium is needed for energy production. It's incredibly important for muscle and nerve function, and equally important for the regulation of the overall nervous system and our stress response. Studies have found that low levels of magnesium in the body frequently contribute to anxiety symptoms, and while this may be for many factors, one of the main reasons why is because magnesium has a significant role in the synthesis of GABA, our inhibitory neurotransmitter. GABA is our inhibitory neurotransmitter in the central nervous system, meaning that it helps reduce the activity of neurons, which calm the central nervous system, as opposed to our excitatory neurotransmitter glutamate. So the way I like to describe the difference between these two is that GABA, as the inhibitory neurotransmitter, is responsible for making us feel chill. Magnesium is actually required for the conversion of glutamate into GABA, and magnesium helps to activate GABA receptors, which allows GABA to exert its calming effects on the nervous system. Magnesium has also been shown to be neuroprotective, having an impact on the expression of BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which ultimately reduces oxidative stress and inflammation in the brain, both of which can contribute to those anxiety symptoms. And did you know that magnesium is actually required for over 300 enzymatic reactions in the body, which basically means that over 300 biochemical processes require magnesium to maintain homeostasis. All of which is to say is that the examples we just talked about are really only scratching the surface on how magnesium deficiencies may contribute to your overall physical and mental health. So because magnesium is required for so many bodily functions, I want to go through the most common symptoms that someone may experience if they have a magnesium deficiency. Number one is muscle cramps and weakness. Magnesium plays a critical role in muscle function, and low levels can lead to things like cramping, twitching, and weakness, as well as my least favorite thing, restless legs. If I do not take magnesium at night, I will end up being up with restless legs, and then I remember, oh, I must have forgotten to take my magnesium. Number two is general fatigue and weakness. And this is because magnesium is involved in the production of ATP, the main source of energy in the body, so it's incredibly important for overall energy production. Number three are mood disturbances. Because magnesium is so important for the regulation of neurotransmitters in the brain, decreased magnesium can lead to these mood disturbances like anxiety, depression, irritability, and it actually plays a huge role in PMS as well. There's oftentimes an increased need for magnesium in the luteal phase of the menstrual cycle. Number 4 is sleep disturbances because magnesium is involved in the sleep-wake cycle. So low levels of magnesium may lead to a disturbance in sleep. Number 5 is irregular heartbeats. Magnesium is an electrolyte, so it's involved in cardiovascular health, and deficiencies can lead to some irregular heart arrhythmia. Number 6 is nausea and vomiting, and this is something that we mainly see with severe magnesium deficiencies, so it's probably not as common as some of these other symptoms on this list. Number 7 is headaches. Magnesium deficiencies can contribute to frequent headaches and migraines. And number 8 is constipation because magnesium does play a role in bowel regularity. So now that we know some common symptoms of magnesium deficiencies, let's talk about what foods are actually highest in magnesium. Some of the foods highest in magnesium are first going to be leafy greens, those dark leafy green vegetables. Magnesium is actually part of what gives chlorophyll its green pigment, which is super cool. Nuts and seeds are often high in magnesium. Legumes like chickpeas and some other beans are fairly high in magnesium. Fish is one of the highest protein sources that contains magnesium. And then whole and unrefined grains. Well, refined grains tend to actually have the lowest levels of magnesium. But the real question is can you actually get enough magnesium through food itself? Let's first talk about the fact that magnesium is a very common micronutrient inadequacy measured by various health institutions that approximate that up to 50% of Americans do not consume the RDA levels of magnesium from food on a daily basis. Now, this is the RDA requirement that if you ask me and a lot of other people in my profession would likely agree that it is significantly low and doesn't even take into account all of the other factors that I'm about to go over with you that will exhibit why it's likely much higher than 50% of people that aren't getting enough magnesium. The first factor that often gets brought up when considering magnesium is the depletion of magnesium in our soil. Soil depletion of magnesium is a phenomenon that refers to the loss of magnesium in soil due to over-farming, the use of chemical fertilizers, and other environmental factors. As a result, crops grown in magnesium-depleted soil may contain lower levels of magnesium, which can impact the magnesium content of the food supply. Research suggests that magnesium has declined over the past few decades, possibly due to soil depletion and the changes in these agricultural practices. The next factor that I think is really important to consider when it comes to magnesium is our increased need for magnesium due to the levels of stress that most people are under these days. There are actually certain nutrients that we essentially burn through more when we're under a lot of physiological as well as psychological stress, these being B vitamins and magnesium being one of them as well. In addition to this, there is actually something called the magnesium stress vicious circle, and this refers to the bidirectional relationship between magnesium levels and stress. Basically, magnesium deficiencies can induce symptoms and increase susceptibility to stress, while acute and chronic stress can perpetuate magnesium deficiencies. And this is because stress hormones causes a higher magnesium concentration to be excreted through the kidneys. So essentially, we're caught in this magnesium stress cycle of needing more magnesium because of the stress we're under, but because of the stress we're under, we're also excreting more magnesium. And the last factor that I want to talk about regarding a potential increased need for magnesium levels is just our biochemical individuality. Do you have a chronic health condition that may increase your overall needs for magnesium? Maybe it makes you burn through these stores quicker, and maybe it makes it less bioavailable for you in the food. For example, people with diabetes often need more magnesium because of its role in insulin regulation. And people with gastrointestinal diseases or a history of alcoholism all have increased needs for magnesium. Are you potentially taking a medication that depletes or inhibits magnesium absorption? Because these are fairly common as well. For example, PPIs or proton pump inhibitors and antacids like omeprazole and Prolozec interfere with magnesium absorption, whereas medications commonly taken for blood pressure may lead to a more significant decrease or depletion in magnesium levels because of its diuretic effect. Birth control or oral contraceptive pills have also been shown to deplete levels of magnesium along with many other nutrients. This is by no means an exhaustive list of all medications that may interfere with magnesium. I definitely always recommend that whatever medication someone may be on, that they look into the drug-nutrient interactions as well as the drug-nutrient depletions. So now that we understand why many of us may need an increased intake of magnesium, let's talk about the best forms of magnesium for anxiety. So like I mentioned in the intro, there are many forms of magnesium. It's a common question that I get on which forms people should take. And basically the different forms refer to what the magnesium is bound with, because magnesium by itself isn't well absorbed in the body. So for example, magnesium citrate is magnesium bound with the compound citric acid. Another thing that's very common is for magnesium to be bound with an amino acid like taurine or glycine. Different forms provide us with different bioavailability, absorption, and ultimately different therapeutic properties depending on what they're going to be bound with. Some of the most common forms of magnesium that you'll see in like a drug food store and a multivitamin will be magnesium oxide and magnesium citrate. I never really recommend magnesium oxide. It's very poorly absorbed. Magnesium citrate can be beneficial, but it's not what I'm going to recommend for anxiety specifically. Magnesium citrate is great for bowel regularity. More absorbable forms of magnesium in the muscle tissue and in your body overall that are going to have that calming effect are going to be forms of magnesium like magnesium L Threonate, magnesium malate, and magnesium taurate. I would take one of these if I was really looking to increase the levels of magnesium in my body overall, or if I was really hoping to have that calming effect. Although malate can have a slightly energizing effect for some people because it can be beneficial for things like fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue. While all three of these are great forms of magnesium that have been very well studied, it's still not my #1 recommendation for the type of magnesium that's best for anxiety. The #1 magnesium that I recommend for symptoms of anxiety is called Magnesium L Threonate. This is actually a patented form of magnesium that was developed by some scientists at MIT a little over 10 years ago, and it's known for its ability to cross the blood-brain barrier. Other forms of magnesium have a very difficult time crossing the blood-brain barrier and even essentially getting into the brain. So magnesium L Threonate is really the best form for increasing levels of magnesium in the brain itself. This is why it's become such a popular choice for people hoping to improve their overall neurological health, their cognitive function, their mood, their learning capabilities, and even their anxiety or reducing those anxiety symptoms. It has been my clinical takeaway as well as my own personal experience that magnesium L Threonate works fairly quickly, likely because of that ability to cross the blood-brain barrier, which makes it a great magnesium to turn to for not only generalized anxiety, but for someone who experiences frequent anxiety or panic attacks, which you can essentially take it if you feel something like that coming on, or if it's something like I mentioned that you experience frequently, you can start dosing magnesium L Threonate preemptively, and that will likely help diminish the amount of episodes or overall frequency in which you are experiencing these attacks. While we still need more studies on it, there have been a few that found magnesium L Threonate supplementation to be associated with a significant reduction in anxiety, depression, and stress levels in individuals with major depressive disorder. There are some drawbacks with magnesium L Threonate, the main one really being the cost. Because it is that patented form of magnesium, it has a much higher barrier to entry in terms of cost compared to other magnesium. So if you don't understand what magnesium L Threonate does and you're just comparing it to other magnesiums, you're likely like, why would I pay, double or triple the amount for this form of magnesium? But if you do understand its potential effects and know that it's specifically targeted for very therapeutic purposes, then I highly recommend it's something that people try. What's kind of cool about it being a patented form is that essentially in every magnesium threonate supplement or brand, you're going to be getting the exact same compound. You're going to be getting magtine, which is that patented form of magnesium L Threonate. So I'm going to leave a link to some of my favorite brands below, and this is really just because after taking several, I feel like these brands have the best cost milligram ratio benefit. Lastly, I want to talk about the safety of magnesium supplementation. As always, you want to talk to your healthcare provider before you add on any additional supplements. While magnesium supplementation is generally considered pretty safe because one, most people are deficient in it, and two, the main side effects that you're going to get with it are going to be those laxative effect if you take it in a very high dose. But there are certain people that need to be a little bit more cautious with any form of magnesium supplementation, and these are people that have renal concerns or kidney concerns or chronic kidney disease. And this is really because the kidneys are what excretes excess magnesium and also maintains that overall electrolyte balance in your body. So if you have any kidney concerns, you absolutely want to make sure that you talk to your healthcare provider before you consider magnesium supplementation. If anxiety is something that has been weighing on you heavily lately, A, please know that you are not alone, and B, please hit the subscribe and notification bell because I have a series of videos coming up on anxiety about the best and the worst foods to eat and the best supplements that are going to help significantly reduce your anxiety symptoms. So I'll see you next time.